Hey everyone, welcome back to another Get to Know the L&D Companion Speaker faculty members. I am absolutely delighted to bring our next speaker into the interview. I met Nneka via social media, so the power of social media. We spoke and I think just found a real common ground in what we're trying to achieve. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce everyone to Nneka Smith. Nneka, welcome to the L&D Companion.
Hello.
And if you don't mind, what we'd like to do as part of the Get to Know our speakers is find out more about you, how you become a radiographer, why you become a radiographer, and how your career took the crossroads and pivots that it did, because it's a really interesting one. And for me, it was a delight, because I knew straight away from an authenticity perspective, people would understand and really resonate with them. So I'm going to hand the floor to you. Tell us how you become a radiographer, why you become a radiographer, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so it's a bit of a story. I started out life as a chemistry and physics teacher, teaching from age 7 up to 19, and absolutely loved it, but then took on roles that were really pastorally focused. So very intense, lots of hard work, teaching A-level and GCSE groups at the same time. And then we hit kind of 2008 period where we really hit the recession, and it really impacted the wellbeing services available to young people. And we kind of started to really feel those effects kind of 5 or so years after that, where we in schools were having to deal with a lot of the demands in school that used to kind of trigger the next level previously. And so we weren't getting as much support. So it was really full on and really difficult, because when you're passionate and you care, you do what you can to kind of really embrace and really support those that you're working with. But that takes a toll. So at the point I had, by this point, my son, who was born, and he was about 18 months when I was really at the height of my kind of pastoral role. So I was in charge of child protection and safeguarding, and I was getting phone calls at 2 a.m. from the police to kind of say, we've got a student, we know they're at your school, we knew you'd answer, can you help us? Which is great, because it means that those individuals get the support and the help that they need. But for me personally, it was taking a toll. I had a very young child. I was working 60 plus hours a week, and it just wasn't sustainable. And then I fell ill, and no one could work out what it was. And so I took the really difficult decision to leave education and do some training, just upskill myself, have some time to just kind of reassess and see what was happening. And it was a no-brainer for radiography, because I'd spent most of my time explaining how MRI machines work and how X-rays work and things as part of the curriculum. And I'd had almost every kind of form of radiographic procedure possible. So CT, MR, X-ray. I'd also had various other things as well. So it just made sense to me. It kind of fit in with what I kind of knew already, and that connection between education and training and working and talking to people and meeting patients in their time of need kind of really overlapped. So that's what I did. So, most people take a year or two off. I decided to retrain for 3 years.
Go straight back into it, out the frying pan and into the fire. But it's interesting. So we're talking now, when late 2000s, early 2010s.
So I actually started my radiography course in 2016. Yeah, so by the time I'd completely finished things and reapplied to uni. And I started from first year. I could have kind of pushed to have some of my credits from my first undergrads taken on board, but I thought if I'm going to go back into education after so long, I'm going to do it properly and I'm going to do the full course. So
Yeah.
did the full 3 years.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
And do you know, as a mature, where did you qualify? Where did you go to university, Nneka? Hearts? No.
University of Suffolk.
Oh, Suffolk. Okay. And so I always find it fascinating when people have had a career before radiography because you bring a different type of skill
Mm.
set, which probably, as we'll go on to speak about, propelled some of your future direction as well. But was you one of a few mature students? What was the sort of dynamic like?
Yeah, so there were a few of us, but it was mostly kind of 18 to 25, I would say, was the main cohort of my group.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, I'd worked with young people my whole life. I coach outside of work. I'm a sports coach. So I didn't find it too difficult. And having had a previous career, I think I came at the course with a slightly different mindset. So I really did help some of my fellow students, and kind of when they were too shy to ask if they could support, I would be like, "Oh, can so and so do it?" Which they loved eventually when they realized the benefits of it. But at first, it was difficult. They were like, "I don't want to do it." And then slowly, kind of they realized that it was all right to put your hand up and say, can I join in or do that, without worrying too much about what everyone thinks? Because by the time you're in your 30s, you kind of start not worrying too much about what people think, and you've got a bit more kind of confidence in yourself and what you need to do and how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because we're in a society, we're asking for help, and even within the NHS and radiography, we're asking for help. You feel that anxiety. You're like, oh, I shouldn't be. I should know these stuff. But actually, if we're thinking about duty of candor and all of those things, it tells us that we should put our hands up and say, hey, actually, I'm not sure. Let me go and find out. Let me get this, and reassure patients. And I think in a way it works better for everybody if you are able to kind of have that confidence and saying, not sure, but what I will do is go and find out for you.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, by the way. I mean, and I think the higher people, the more senior people become in their roles, and particularly into line management and leadership, the more challenging it is to be able to have an environment where you can say, I don't know, and feel that it's a
Mm,
strength and not a weakness, Nneka. And
yeah,
and I think,
yeah.
given that we're talking, you've been a radiographer for the best part of 10 years. However, you think about where, and it's amazing to think what you're doing now. And I can't wait for, the people listening to this to hear what you've been doing. It should be celebrated, by the way. But I'm sure a lot of what went on before in your career, and the way that you said that you were generally, you worked in these coaching roles and so on, that it helped propel your career, in where you wanted it to go. Perhaps it was more clearer to you, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I definitely had an awareness of kind of career prospects and opportunities, and how to put your head above the parapet and your hand in the ring. Um, and so yeah, it did kind of support me in that way, because I'd done a lot of UCAS work with sixth formers, trying to get them into university, and looking at courses and looking at opportunities, and how does doing X get you into Y and Z, or wherever it might be. So knowing that no path is kind of one straight line, there are lots of different ways and opportunities to get to your end goal.
Yeah, definitely. So making a difference and helping people is clearly, factored a lot in your career, both pre and post, radiography, Nneka. And obviously, it's a very good trait to have as a radiographer. What what's driven that? Has there been sort of little catalysts in your life that has driven that desire to make a difference in other people's lives as well?
Yeah, so it has. So there are a few things really. I at 25 gave blood with some friends and was diagnosed with a blood disorder,
Mm.
which originally we thought I was carrier, but the kind of testing that was done back when I was born in the 80s versus, the 90s and the early noughties and so on, had developed. So they were more aware of kind of these other forms of the blood disorder where you've got two different kind of genes and how they interact with each other and cause these things. So a lot of my life I have had to battle with my health and had to battle with getting people to hear me, to understand, and to take me seriously. And so I've got a few things. I've also got fibromyalgia, which is a musculoskeletal disorder, which comes about from central nervous system and autonomic nervous system dysfunction. And that we think is kind of a cause or come about because I wasn't diagnosed with my blood disorder at a young age. And so all the pain and all the other things that were happening in my body have just caused it to do that. So having to fight those fights and get that understanding from people and has really kind of reinforced what I've done in my career with young people about being heard and advocating and ensuring that we don't forget who's at the center of whatever we're doing. And that's kind of, yeah, propelled me into doing some of the things that I do.
Definitely. And interestingly, you often find a pattern, don't you, Nneka, in terms of when people have to experience adversity earlier on in their lives, you often then see a pattern as to how they how it drives your motivations for
Mm.
what career choice you take, and also
Mm-hmm.
how you sort of the dynamics of how you function within that career. I spoke to
Mm-hmm.
someone in Australia who I worked with many years ago, and he had a near fatal bike accident, and now what
Mm.
drives him is that he pulled through and now has this desire to give back somehow in some way for his gratitude for still being here. Now, obviously, everyone
Yeah.
has different reasons. It could be a family member. It could be
Mm-hmm.
just an experience of their own. However, it is. It is. I often say what we do in these situations is, we need to provide environments, Nneka, for people with those motivations to be able to help experience and deliver upon it. Because if we suppress it, it then becomes a problem in itself because you're not feeling like you're fulfilling everything. And
Yeah.
we spoke about this, didn't we? Because a lot of this drove, um, our plans to work together and collaborate on the L&D companion, because I feel
Mhm.
this is something that we can really help develop within our radiographer community. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this. So, what before I do that, tell us about what you're doing now, because I think that in itself, in terms of your role, is amazing. And I think what we'd love to be able to say, because it shouldn't be a club, is that we could, an elite club, should I say, is that, in many years to come, we could potentially help create more radiographers doing what you're doing now.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And thank you. Um, I don't know, I don't kind of see it as something amazing, but every so often I do stop and think and I look around and I don't see many radiographers in the room. So it is something that I am passionate about because the more diversity we have with regards to the professions in the room and the kind of characters that slot into each of the professions really does create a much better environment to problem solve, to kind of create and come up with these solutions and strategize. So what I do is I'm currently the head of professional practice, and how that came about is I went into the clinical education route. So during COVID, I was front facing, I was working, and then in about the April or so on, was told I should shield, because everybody with a hemoglobinopathy and various other disorders were then told to kind of go and shield. But I wasn't given anything to do. So I went home. I think my son was about 5 or so at the time, maybe 6. So was at primary school, had been going to school. So now I was homeschooling, but I didn't have anything to do, not even, audits or anything. And I, as somebody who likes to be active and likes to work, none of my coping strategies were there for me, because I couldn't go out and play netball. I couldn't go out and socialise. I was stuck with my 4 walls. So I started to think, if this carries on, what does my career look like? If we
Right.
have something else like COVID, or if we have, whatever it is, what does my career look like, and how can I adapt so I can still do what I love and still keep going, even when things are really difficult? So I found a loophole, because, why not? And I went back and started working clinically again. So I think I shielded for 4 months and then found a loophole, and fought to kind of get others that were deemed high risk to be able to do more within their roles.
Wow.
So, why couldn't we work out of hours, but in areas where it was supposedly green? And I'm using green because this is what we labelled things as, and what that meant differed in each hospital and so on and so forth. But if these patients were able to be x-rayed by us or seen by us, then why couldn't we then work in those environments slightly more out of hours, change what we were doing, support our team more, because everybody was exhausted, and so we did. And so I started to think, I'm a band 5 radiographer, but I've got almost 15 years of education behind me in training, and I was, an assistant head teacher when I retrained. Surely there is a way I can utilize all of these skills and make things better, not just for radiographers, but for the trust as a whole. And so that's when I went into the clinical education sphere, and I was on a secondment for 12 months. And that was a band 7 secondment, and it was looking at expanding the clinical placements for AHP students. So not just radiographers, but everybody under that umbrella. So physios, OTs, dietetics, and so on. And it was great, because I got to engage with all of my fellow AHPs and what they did and how they trained their students and the differences in our courses. But I was the only non-nurse in the education team. And we sat in the office of the chief nurse. So in the whole office of the chief nurse, apart from our director of AHPs, I was the only non-nurse. And so when we had another role come up, I said, why can't another AHP do this? Like, we have AHPs who do crossover work with our nursing colleagues. There isn't a reason why they couldn't. So we recruited a therapeutic radiographer, and they became one of the nursing practice education facilitators and would support there, because they have a lot of the similar kind of practices with injections and so on and so forth. And so it just started from there. So then there was an AHP workforce lead role that came in that was looking at the ESR data cleanse and how all of our AHPs in non-traditional roles, where we were in the organisation and how we were coded, but also a lot of people were then just put down as a nurse, even though they weren't nurses and they weren't registered within NMC. They were HCPC registrants. So cleansing all of that data and finding where all my other colleagues were was really, really insightful. But that secondment came to an end after about 6 months. So during that time, I was looking for roles and what to do. It was go back and be a band 5 radiographer, which I loved, and I had no worries about going back. I was still doing that at least 1 or 2 days a month, and helping out the team when they were short staffed. But I thought, how can I continue what I'm doing, but on a bigger scale that kind of really got people to understand that it didn't have to be a nurse, it didn't have to be a midwife, it could be an AHP, it could be a radiographer, it could be whatever. And I got my current role, but before I kind of restructured my team. So I was the head of clinical education, non-medical. So I oversaw nursing, midwifery, AHPs, health sciences and pharmacy.
Wow.
And did that for a while, and I was spinning plates because it was a really small team that I was line managing. I was line managing the pre-reg nursing team, so they looked after the nursing students. We had a post-registration team, which I didn't really kind of oversee, but then I did because their team leader left our organisation for personal reasons, and we didn't know what to do with them. So I said, why don't we combine the two teams? So we did, and we started coordinating with our AHP education colleagues, supporting them to get education facilitator roles sorted for them. We worked with the midwives, and we were all doing the same things. And it was like, why are we kind of reproducing this 6-7 times? Why aren't we just using a standard uniform approach? And so I kind of started by hiring a permanent AHP workforce and education lead. So we had a permanent role full time, and then I was doing that. I was still spinning plates, and I thought, this isn't sustainable. We need more staff. We need more of a structure. So we created a new structure where I was the head of professional practice, overseeing education, professional advocacy, and linking in with safer staffing and linking in with our ward accreditation schemes. And then we had a uniform approach. So whatever we were seeing in the clinical areas, we were able to say, well, this is going to impact our future students, but our current students who are about to graduate and become registered and join the workforce. So starting to kind of match up that journey. So from a student all the way through to preceptorship and after preceptorship. And so that's where I am now.
Wow. And what's fascinated me in our discussions, Nneka, and I'm sure will feature in how you how you present what you present with your experience and expertise and skills and knowledge, is what you've learned from the other professions. Because and there's one thing I just want to pick up on before you answer that, because it's fairly cliche, although it's so important. You said one thing to me, or one thing to us just now. When you was talking about the roles that you could take next, you said, why not? Why can't it be a radiographer? And that alone possibly is one of the most powerful questions when people are seeing these roles that come available, or opportunities, is, well, why not?
Mm,
because the answer that's not acceptable is because it's always been A,
yeah,
or we've
yeah,
always done it that way, right? So,
yeah.
these boundaries are there to be challenged, and you did
Hmm.
exactly that, right?
Yeah. It's really important. One of the things I remember um, one of my chief nurses saying to me was, the reason I have you in the room is because you will think about things that none of us do.
Wow.
And
Pull
you
my
will
head down
always
with
check
energy, tell
and
me
challenge.
that. Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah. And you will always check and challenge. And a lot of times check and challenge is seen as people, they get defensive with it. And it's not that. It's just me saying, hold on a minute, have we thought about X? Or hold on a minute, yes, we've done it this way. Is there a way we can make it more uniform so that it's easier to expand across all of our professions? And we often trial things in nursing because I direct line manage a lot more nurses than I do anyone else. But the next step is my AHP workforce and education lead is in those meetings and sees these things happen and will say to me, oh, there's a way we can make that work in X, Y, or Z. And that's the beauty of check and challenge, because it stops us reproducing things, which is more time consuming. It costs so much more. If we ask those questions, why not? Or if not me, who? Or any of those style questions, it it affords us that opportunity to find the most effective and the most efficient way of doing things.
definitely. So actually, in many ways, it's not just about what have you learnt from some of the other professions, it's what they've learnt from the awareness of you. And we spoke about this
Mhm.
before, right? I mean, this is,
Mhm.
this isn't there's an opportunity here, isn't there, Naked, to kind of um, highlight the superpowers, for want of a better expression, of radiographers. And, it is
Mhm.
about quality, health and safety. It is about operational leadership and
Mhm.
operational management, and
Yeah.
to demonstrate that these are all the things that you learn quite early on in your career as a radiographer,
Mhm.
that not
Mhm.
aren't necessarily, replicated in some of the other professions, because they're
Yeah.
learning different skills. So,
Yeah.
the the more we can actually do this to demonstrate and create awareness of the
Mm.
skill sets of radiographers, and really
Mm.
bring out that confidence. And I think the more people we would be able to, more radiographers would be able to produce into these senior roles, right? And
Yeah.
my question to you, Naka, is, when we spoke about the L&D companion and being able to offer this as a radiographer, support mechanism,
Mm.
in continued professional development. I know it resonated with you, but what what are the sort of things you would like to bring in terms of all of the experience that you've learned, in
Mm.
your career as a whole? So before as a teacher in education, and now as a radiographer and as a radiography leader.
So for me, one of the strengths that we have in radiography, and call it whatever you want, but it's governance and assurance. From day one, when you're registered, you're responsible for radiation protection, you're responsible for various other things when you're undertaking your role. And, that bit about adapting technique is what we do day in, day out. Everybody is different. So someone comes in and they've broken their arm, they will hold it in a different way to the next person. It's very common to do this, but some people won't do that. They'll do this. And we're automatically thinking, right, how am I going to get this board under their arm? How am I going to get them to trust me? How am I going to talk them through this? And it's all of those skills as radiographers that we just kind of put down as it's our job, it's what we do. But it doesn't happen everywhere.
No.
And that's one of the beauties of radiography, that we take it for granted that we do so much problem solving and so much kind of looking at the bigger picture as well as seeing the fine detail, that we just take it as well, it's just what we do.
Yes,
But
right.
it's
Sign
not.
off. Just doing my job.
Yeah, but it's not. Because if you think more broadly, if we take nursing, for example, governance and assurance is there, but it tends to come at the higher bands.
Yeah.
And so it's something they learn over time. It's something we've had to learn from day one. When you're critiquing as a student and you're looking at your exposure factors and whether you've used the right dose and you've used this, and kind of explaining why you're not repeating an image or why you are repeating an image, those are skills that take 5, 6, 7 years in other professions within the NHS, but we have to do from day one. And so when we go into what we call non-traditional roles, we bring that with us.
Mm.
So I know in my organisation, our chief AHP started actually as a general manager in radiology. And that wasn't something that many individuals did. And they're a
No.
radiographer. But it was because they had the knowledge and the understanding of, the finance, the governance, the assurance, all of those factors, which gave them this opportunity to go into that role and say, actually, I could do this. Like, I've worked in this system. I know how the system works. And therefore, I can see the big picture. I can see where we can make the, adjustments and those savings, and how we can utilize those savings then to upskill and train all of our staff. And so that's some of the things that we bring. So in my role, I had a conversation the other week with another organisation, and we were talking about kind of how do we use our tariff that comes with, supporting students in their journey and our apprentices, and how can we utilise models that we already use there for our existing staff in CPD and training? And why aren't we collating that money and doing something that upskills and trains everybody in one go, rather than sending individuals off to go and do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
And it's really key, because you hear our staff saying, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting any personal development. I don't feel like I'm getting this. So if we coordinated and worked together a little bit more, we could do that. And we could then we know how good multi-professional approaches to things are. We see multidisciplinary team meetings all the time and the benefits of them. So we
Yeah.
know that having people from different professions really does enrich what we do. And so it's that's the root of it. That's where it comes from. It's those skills and those opportunities that we have as radiographers from day one, that we grow and we develop in year on year as we improve, and we take other roles within our development, and even supervising students or going into a specialty. All of those skills that you're developing open the doorway to other roles.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, there is such an opportunity for us, Nneka. I've witnessed a huge amount of resilience kicking in. You know, when they say, you don't know
Mm.
how strong you are until strong is the only thing. And forgive me that I've made a complete, belly up of that terminology, but you know what I mean, right? It's that I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of resilience kick in
Mm.
in the profession recently. We need
Mm.
to use this window of opportunity where that resilience is in there, where people reminded themselves why they've come into the profession, and how we can work in an inclusive way as a community to help each other. And as you've experienced and are demonstrating, how we can do that in a multidisciplinary sort of multi-professional environment,
Mm.
where we can learn off each other, and it's going to be through those things that they're going to see how radiographers are really developing a skills base which can be very useful to other professions, and an awareness of what radiographers are doing. So I'm really, really excited to have you involved with this program, Nneka, and I can't thank you enough for your enthusiasm, and I can't wait to start working with you on it.
Thank you. It's exciting. It really is, because it's a platform that we haven't had. And I know you've done a lot of work with the society, and I have in various guises. But sometimes we just get set in our ways and we just think, well, I'm just a radiographer, but it's bigger than that. We're more than just radiographers. We're the communicators. We're the adaptability. We're the check and challenge. We're the safety. We're the governance. We're the clinical assurance. All of that is what we do. So
Yeah,
why can't we go into those roles? Why can't we challenge in that way? And so it's really, really important for the growth of radiography, but also for the growth of the NHS. We can't just keep going the way we have. I think you said it earlier about because
yeah,
it's not an answer anymore.
no,
It's not good enough anymore. What's the reasoning? And if there is no reasoning, right, okay, we change it. And
yeah,
we test things out, we trial things out. And in radiography, that's what we do every day. It's, oh, we've got a patient who's got this kind of fracture and they can't move in this way, but we need this image. How do we adapt our technique? That is basically what we're doing when we're in all of these other roles. It's, we've got this problem, how do we solve it?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
if not,
Yeah, well, thank you, Nneka. And one thing, just a final point from me, just to say to you, is I think what the other opportunity I think we have here is if we can start to get radiographers at as early stage a part of their career as possible to start thinking about where the future direction of not only their career but the profession is going as well, we can start to shape it. And I'm thinking about, I'm thinking very purposefully at the moment about things like AI. I'm thinking about, the technology. I'm thinking about the like better collaboration with industry and how we can learn from all the different expertise that sits in our sector. So, I'm yeah, excited to see where that one's going to go. Nneka, the final words for you. Anything else you want to add before?
yeah, just like you said, we don't know how strong we are, how good we are, how resilient we are until we've got nothing left but our skills, our knowledge, and our understanding. And when you break down what radiographers do day in, day out, it isn't just radiography. When I started, there was the joke about you just press a button. We know that's a fallacy. We know we don't do that. I lost count very early of how many surgeons I used to go up to and say, I'm really sorry, can't take your x-ray cause. And they're like, oh, thanks. And it's from day dot, we're doing that. As a band 5, I was like, off you go and speak to them. You've got to sort it. And I was like, oh, but it's a surgeon. But no, we can't have that in the NHS. We've got to check and challenge because it's our job. So as radiographers, we come with more than just we're a radiographer. We've got skills, we've got knowledge, we've got understanding. It's really important we start sharing it widely.
Definitely amplifying the voice. Nneka, thank you so much. I can't wait to be part of your first webinar and to get the journey, go on this journey with you. So thank you very, very much. And great. And we'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.